Hello people, it's Guilty Guardian again, and I'm gonna do my new deck profile. It's Volcanic deck with Paleozoic support, and this deck is pretty fun to play, and also if you start with good cards, and especially if you're going first, you can defeat almost anything that's on the other side. Of course, those two conditions are not met too often, but in other cases you can also have a pretty fun and duel that you can win. So let's start. First, a standard volcanic package. You go 3 copies of rocket, 3 copies of scattershot, and 3 copies of shell. Your rocket is main searcher for your blaze accelerator when it's summoned anyways, so normal, special, flip. You get a blaze accelerator from your deck to your hand. Pretty good effect for this deck. And 3 copies of rocket, 3 copies of scattershot, the main monster, the main ammunition for your accelerator. So when this card is sent to the graveyard, it deals 500 points of damage. When it's sent to the graveyard by effect of Blaze Accelerator, you can send 2 other scattershot from your hand or deck to the graveyard and Raigeki your opponent's field. Pretty good effect, especially in this deck, which is a recycling, so you use this effect many times during duel, and every time you deal 1500 points of damage because you send 3 scattershots to the graveyard and Raigeki your opponent's field. Also 3 copies of shell, great card for consistency of the deck. When it is in the graveyard you pay 500 points of damage, 500 life points, and get another shell from your deck to your hand. Then you use it with the effect of reload, blaze accelerator, and draw a card. Pretty good. And that's standard as I would say volcanic package. Next, I run 3 copies of Royal Firestone Guards. Of course, every volcanic deck has this card, but I don't think many decks have 3 copies of it. Most usually players run 2 copies. I run 3 because one reason is, of course, its effect. When it's normal summoned, you target 4 Pyro type monsters, shuffle them into deck, and draw 2 cards, which enables you use your scattershots effect several times during duel. But the other reason that I run 3 copies of it is because if you drew this card during early stages of duel and you don't have 4 Pyro type monsters, you can't use its effect, but it is a target for this spell Dice of the Brethren, and I will talk about this spell now. So with this spell you target a monster you control, level 4 or lower, and special summon from your deck 2 monsters with different name from each other and from targeted monster, and special summon them. And they must be same level and same type. So, and attribute, of course. So you run in your deck most of your monsters that are not targets for your load, I mean all of them, excluding Scattershot and Shell, are level 4 fire pyro type monsters. and that's because of this card, so you can special summon it. And Firestone Guards is also target of it, so if you don't have so good hand and Ties of Brethren and your Firestone Guards, you go for it, you special summon your other cards, other good monsters, and it's then pretty good, and you have nice opening table. Next, I run one copy of Volcanic Slicer. This card is here only because of Ties of the Brethren, so it can be targeted when it's summoned, and it can be special summoned from your deck, because monsters you special summon have to have different names from each other and from targeted monsters, so for that reason here is one Slicer. It also has an effect, you can burn 500 points of damage to your opponent, and this card can't attack during that turn, but nothing too special good, but can be used, of course. And very good card in this deck, card that makes this deck much more competitive than it would have been without it. It's Barrier Statue of the Inferno. So this card doesn't allow any special summon that isn't with fire monster. Your all monsters in main deck are fire. You don't go for your extra deck in this deck too often, and this is what makes your deck really annoying to your opponent. There are very few decks that run fire attribute, excluding Metal Falls or Fire Formation. I can't remember any that is playing relatively often now, but even if they play against you, this card can be good. But in other cases, it's really dead for your opponent's special summons. And with your Ties of Brethren, you can easily summon it from your deck, and because of it, 3 copies of Inferno. So that is our 16 monster cards. As I said, you don't go for Xyz too much. Your main plays are based on Blaze Accelerator and Volcanic cards, and because of it, you run just 16 monsters. Next, for spells, 3 copies of Ties of the Brethren. Yes, you pay 2000 life points for activation of this card. You can't conduct your battle phase when you activate it. You can't special summon any other race. But as I said, you don't have to. You don't have to, because your main plays are not Xyz. Your main plays are not with attacking your opponent. Your main plays are with Blaze Accelerator and your Scatter Shot. And that's all that is important for your deck. Next, I run one copy of Magic Planter. So this card, I tried maybe 2 copies and with more continuous traps, but even with this card that allows you drawing 2 cards, you can have a dead hand, and in that case your deck loses its consistency with very great ratio. So 1 copy is pretty enough for this deck. Next, 1 MST. So I added in my deck 2 more MSTs, because even you can target, of course, your opponent's cards, but you can also target your Blaze Accelerator, so and then activate its effect from graveyard. And if you don't have your scatter shot in your hand, it can be pretty useful, especially during your opponent's turn. You can even activate first, reload, then send to the graveyard or shell, draw a card, then activate MST, target, reload, Blaze Accelerator, and activate its effect from graveyard, banish it, and send to the graveyard 1 Scattershot, then activate Scattershot's effect, send 2 more, Raigeki Airfield, deal them 1500 points of damage, and it can be pretty good. Next I run 1 copy of Foolish Burial with Belongings. This card is not in TCG, only OCG, so if you are a TCG player, I recommend you go for another MST. And this card with this card you send to the graveyard your accelerator from your deck. And in your graveyard, accelerator is much more useful in terms of sending scattershot to the graveyard. Even you can send your shell if you have on the field your another accelerator and go for that place. It helps with consistency with shell and helps with beating your opponent with scattershot. So in any cases you need your accelerators in graveyard. So 1 copy of Belongings, 1 copy of Pot of Duality, and 1 copy of Upstart Goblin. Those two again for consistency. It can get cloggy if you have your duality, Pot of Duality and Brethren, but you know, you need your cards and your combos, and because of that I run Pot of Duality. You really need 1 piece. If you don't have 1 piece in your combo, you can't do much, and with it's changed dramatically, so duality is useful in this deck. That is our spell cards. 8 copies of them, and of course our traps. 3 copies of Blaze Accelerator Reload, so when it's activated, when it's on the field, you send 1 volcanic card from your hand to the graveyard and draw a card. So consistency. And when it is in the graveyard during your opponent's main phase, you can banish this card from your graveyard and send 1 volcanic card from your deck to the graveyard. In 90% of cases you send your scattershot and Raigeki Airfield before they attack, but of course you can send your shell if you have another accelerator on the field, as I said, and with that combos you make your hand stronger. So that's for it. 3 copies of accelerator, of course. And next we go with our Paleozoic support. Paleozoics are really good in this deck. With Marella you send your accelerator to the graveyard, so Belongings with Last Trap, and with their effect you can defend if you don't have so good draw. Not too good, but I wouldn't say it's bad. So you send your accelerator, then activate its effect. 3 copies of Morale, of course. And other Paleozoic are 2 copies of Olenoids. So, like MST, you can also target your cards, so you can target accelerator with it. But and of course, when you activate it, you can special summon another Paleozoic from your graveyard. Not only it, when you activate any of those traps, and it's good. 2 copies of Canadia, So Book of Moon, nice, and one copy of Melancholia, so you can return your banished accelerator to the graveyard. This card is good. I tried running more of them, but it gets cloggy if you don't have your accelerators banished yet and you draw Melancholia. It's pretty not useful, and one copy of it. 3 copies of Waboku. You can run this or Threatening Roar. Maybe Threatening Roar is better, but in most cases their effects are same. And you can activate this card in response to MST or Twin Twister or that cards that destroy it, and you special summon one Polyzoic card from your graveyard. Pretty good. And 2 copies of Jar of Avarice. You see, this card is really good. You have your Firestorm, but you need to recycle your deck, and you do it by targeting your Scattershot in the graveyard and shell, and without it your deck is dead. With it your deck is consistent and your deck is destructive to your opponent. So you need to recycle it as much as you can. Of course, not too much. I mean, I don't run 3 copies of Jar of Avarice, but 2 copies are really good, and also when it is activated you can special summon your Polyzoic from your graveyard, and of course it can be activated in response to MST or something similar. And that is my main deck, and main deck is pretty much all you need, but I run 15 cards in my extra deck. I really don't think that they are needed, but they can be useful in some extreme cases, and this is my extra deck. I'll just mention what I run. 2 copies of Totally Awesome Utopia package, so Utopia, Lightning, and Prime and Shining. Next, the Augusto Emerald, 3 copies of Cowboy, and 1/101, 1 Dark Rebellion Exceeds Dragon, 1 number 59 Back the Cook, so maybe this card can be useful, and 1 Infernal 5 Vixen, but I wanted to discuss a little about this card, number 59, Back to the Cook. So this card is unaffected by other cards' effects when you control no other cards on the field. And you can once per turn during either player turn, so spell speed number 2, detach Xyz material from this card and destroy as many other cards you control as possible, and then this card gains 300 attack until end of this turn for each monster destroyed by this effect. I think if you have your Blaze Accelerator on field and you have your cards that can be activated in response to this, like Waboku, like Jar of Avarice, like most of Polyzoic, then you can activate this effect, destroy your field, destroy your accelerator, and go for Scattershot, and this card gets unaffected during this turn, and it pretty much survives because you Raigakid their field and they don't have anything they in most cases don't have monster that is stronger than 2300 attack and can destroy this card, so maybe I could run more copies of this card, but I really never summoned it, and this is just theoretically what I was talking about. Next inside deck, you can go with the Dimensional Barrier and Threatening Roar, and as I mentioned, I ran more continuous traps like Finish Chain, but as I said, you lose consistency with those cards. Next, you can go with Instant Fusion and Northern even in some cases, but you don't really need. And I added 2 copies of Absolute King Backjack. This card, I found about it not long ago, and I thought maybe this could be useful, but I really didn't try it. I think your deck loses consistency with it, but it sounds interesting, at least, if not anything else. If you try, please let me know in comment section. But that's it for it. As I said, this deck can be really good, can win against almost everything, but you need your good hand at the start, and you need your first turn, because when they already summon their main monsters, your Inferno gets not too useful, and yeah, you can Raigeki their field, of course, with Scattershot and then summon Inferno, but it's better when they didn't even summon anything and you close them up. So that's it, guys, for this time. I thank you for watching and see you guys next time.